Tonight's guest, Michael Goddart, is going to tell us about the lessons he's learned from his past lives. In fact, he's had 88 past lives, maybe more. So let's talk to him about that. We'll see you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How is everyone? I hope you said good. I'm good. I'm in the air conditioning. I feel great. Anyway, I want to welcome you. My name is Charlotte, and I will be your host for the next hour. And this is California Haunts Radio. Exciting, isn't it? Hang on, let me get my button. Whoop, I gotta push my button. What's going on here? That's what I was pushing. Okay. Kind of moved over on me. Anyway, I want to welcome everybody. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal need, I'm just checking the email here. If you have a paranormal need, we can get to you. You know, we might be 2-3 counties away, but we can still get to you. And you can contact us at CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com if you think you might have a problem. Check me out on Facebook. I've got a public page. There's also 2 California Haunts pages on Facebook that you can check us out at. Also, CaliforniaHaunts.org. Anyway, I'm waiting for our guest to come in. He might have had issues, so I'll give it a couple minutes. And I've been thinking about alternatives if he doesn't come in. And I was thinking if you guys in the chat room want to come in and pick my brain, I could tell ghost stories or something. Or, you know what, I can just read another hour of Lizzie Borden. So we'd be ahead a little bit there. So it's totally up to you. But in the meantime, I'm going to be teaching a class on Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific. And it's going to be a psychic development class level 1. And in that class, if you think you might be psychic, or maybe you're already psychic, but you're kind of afraid of what's going on, I can help you control it a little better. I can teach you how to open and close that door. I can teach you how to leave your body and come back. It's just a way to keep the uglies from coming in because, you know, when you open that door a crack, anything and everything comes through. So I can teach you how to kind of control that. Not stop it altogether, but control it. Also, with this class, I will take you to your spirit library. I'll take you to your spirit object. You can meet your spirit guides. Sometimes they'll leave you a note in a special box in the library. I can teach you how to do all that stuff. And and then you'll be able to control your abilities a little better, and you might even have some experiences afterwards. It usually happens. You get to meet your spirit animal too. So anyway, that's Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Check out the website, CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com for more information about that. Or it's even more simple. You can go over to California Haunts meetup page and sign up over there to take the class. But I'm going to be doing that Saturday night. Now, after the class on Saturday night, a little later, say around 9 o'clock, I'm going to be over at California Haunts Ghostly Events on Facebook, and I'm going to be telling ghost stories. So join me for that as well. It's going to be a busy weekend for me. Very busy weekend. Anyhow, while we wait for the guest to come in, you never know. I even sent him a note saying that if it didn't work for him, I could call him on the phone. But you never know about these things. Something might have come up and whatnot, and it's not the first time, right? Tomorrow we've got a great guest coming in. Mary A. Joyce is going to come in, and she's going to be talking about Werner von Braun. And Werner von Braun was one of the Germans that came over and was instrumental in our space exploration. So she's going to be on to talk about him because my understanding is that there's a gentleman named McClellan who was a whistleblower at NASA, wrote some papers about Mr. von Braun believing in aliens, and he also believed that there was life on Mars. So we're going to be talking to Mary Joyce about that tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Okay? Well, what I'm going to do is, since I don't see him coming in, I'm going to go ahead and I think, unless you guys want to jump in and ask me some questions or anything like that, just let me know. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read from Lizzie Borden tonight, and we'll just throw this in as an extra reading session. So I don't know what happened to our guest. Okay. So let me do that. Got my thingy right here. Got my tab. I'll keep looking. If you see me glance over there, that's because I'm looking to see if he shoots me an email. In fact, let me double check that before I power that thing up. But I'm going to read from Lizzie Borden tonight. Oh, there's that lovely sound. Let's see. I don't see him. Meeting request was before Wednesday. What was it? The 20th. Okay. Okay. All right. Well. Okay. So, if he happens to come on, I'll stop reading, and we'll go from there. Let me get back in my inbox. In the meantime, we might as well get the show on the road, right? And read from Lizzie Borden today. Now, when we last left her on Sunday, give a quick update to folks. Let me get over here. Old tablet. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting a lot of messages from my father lately this last month, and I don't know if it means a health thing or if it's just him wanting to hang out with me for a while. Can't blame him. I'm really cool to hang out with. But anyway, I don't know why, but he's been coming around a lot more than he ever did before. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm starting to write these visits down so I can maybe see a pattern. Okay, so again, when we left Lizzie on Sunday evening, when we left her, they were suspecting her in the murder. Essentially, the police told her that she was a person of interest in the murders of her father and stepmother. And so she wasn't really liking life because she thinks that no one's backing her up at home or anything like that. But she's really defensive. She's nervous now. She's thinking back on all the questioning sessions that she had with the police and all that. And she's wondering if and where she slipped up. So, like I said, she's now a person of interest. The funerals are over. They buried him. In fact, the night that they buried him is the night that the police came in and let slip that she was a person of interest. Kind of wicked in a way, but, So we've been going kind of back and forth through the court testimony, of the dresses she had on and different things that she had on at the time. And, what? Don't do that. And, things like that. So let's get on. And if he comes on, then we'll, or if I have to call him, we'll go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to read from Lizzie Borden tonight, okay? All right. John Morris's stroll through town. Sometime Saturday, 2 acquaintances of John Morris's from South Dartmouth came to visit him at the house. South Dartmouth is home to William A. Davis, the butcher with whom John resides, and with whom a major horse trading and cattle deal was in the works. We do not know what transpired during their conversation. The New York Herald ran the following snippet Saturday, August 6, 1892. Late tonight, John V. Morris left the Borden house and walked rapidly down 2nd Street and toward the business portion of the town. There was an officer at his heels. He wandered around for nearly an hour and then returned to the house, the detective never leaving him for an instant. Whether he wished to get air or merely to test the closeness of the espionage to which he is subject is not certain. Sometime that eventful Saturday, Bridget packed the last of her things and left the Borden's attic room for good. A cousin, Patrick Harrington, had offered a room at 95 Division Street in Fall River, walking distance to the police station, although still a fair stretch. She was summoned to the house on Monday, but she would no longer call 92 2nd Street home. Also that day, Marshal Hilliard and Dr. Dolan visited the receiving vault at Oak Grove Cemetery. Nothing was done at that time, other than to look at the bodies in general. Were they taking another look at the wounds, or was the visit for more nefarious motives? Were the 2 men interested in seeing if a small gold ring still circled Andrew Borden's little finger? Or did they check to see if a murder weapon or blood-stained dress had been secreted inside the coffin Saturday morning as Lizzie wept and bent over her father's casket to kiss him? What more clever way to dispose of evidence than to bury it along with the murder victim, 6 feet beneath the ground? The 2 men walked through the cemetery toward their carriage and discussed the case. Inside the cool cavern of the vault, Andrew and Abby Borden lay in their caskets, not yet at peace. Their final degradation was yet to come. Chapter 25. Sunday, August 7th, 1892. The Fall River Herald, August 7th, 1892. Sunday was a quiet day around the house. Emma Borden appeared at the door at 8 o'clock to take in the milk. The servant girl, Bridget Sullivan, could stand the strain no longer and left the house Saturday night to join her friends. None of the family ventured out to church, and there was nobody visible at the windows. The event of the day was the arrival at the house of Detective Hanscom of the Boston Pinkerton Agency, who entered with Lawyer Jennings during the forenoon. He had been hired by the Bordens to look after their interests. He had questioned Lizzie, but found her too exhausted physically for a searching examination. In the Fall River Herald, if the Fall River Herald thought the event of the day was the arrival of Detective Hanscom at 92 2nd Street, they were not privy to Lizzie Borden's movements that Sunday morning. Hanscom's appearance would have paled in comparison to the events about to take place within the Borden kitchen. Alice Russell was questioned during the Superior Court trial as to what occurred on Sunday, August 7th. Mr. Moody for the defense. Who got the breakfast Sunday morning? Alice. I got the breakfast. Moody. After the breakfast had been got and the dishes had been cleared away, did you leave the lower part of the house at all? Alice. Yes, sir. Moody. Afterward, did you return? Alice. Yes, sir. Moody. About what time in the morning was it when you returned? Miss Russell? Alice. I don't know. Moody. Was it before noon? Alice. Yes, sir. Moody. Will you state what you saw after you returned? Alice. I went to the kitchen and I saw Miss Lizzie at the other end of the stove. I saw Miss Emma at the sink. Miss Lizzie was at the stove and she had a skirt in her hand, and her sister turned and said, "What are you going to do?" And Lizzie said, "I'm going to burn this old thing up. It is covered with paint." Moody. Covered in paint. Is that the expression? Alice. I don't know whether she said covered in paint or covered with paint. Moody. Do you recall anything else said then? Alice. No, sir. Moody. What did you do then? Alice. I am quite sure I left the room. Moody. Did you speak to either of them at the time? Alice. No, sir. I don't remember that I did. Moody. Did you come in the room again? Alice. Yes, sir. Moody. What did you see then? Alice. Miss Lizzie stood up towards the cupboard door. The cupboard door was open, and she appeared to be either ripping something down or tearing part of a garment. Moody. What part? Alice. I don't know for sure. It was a small part. Moody. A smaller part? Go on and state. Alice. I said to her, I wouldn't let anybody see me do that, Lizzie. She didn't make any answer. I left the room. Moody. Did she do anything when you said that? Alice. She stepped just one step farther back up towards the cupboard door. Moody. Did you notice where the waist of the dress was when she held the skirt in her hands as you first came in? Alice. I didn't know that it was the waist, but I saw a portion of this dress up on the cupboard shelf. Moody. Inside the cupboard? Alice. Yes, the door was wide open. Moody. When you came back the second time, and she was tearing the smaller part, did you see the skirt? Alice. Well, I am not positive. I think I did. Moody. Did you have any more talk with her that day, or did she say anything to you about it? Alice. No, sir. Moody. At that time, were there any police officers in the house? Alice. No, sir. Moody. Were there any police officers about the premises? Alice. Yes, sir. Moody. Do you know whether there was anyone else in the house except for yourself and Miss Emma and Miss Lizzie Borden? Alice. I don't think there was. Moody. Miss Russell, will you tell us what kind of dress? Give us a description of the dress that she burned that you have testified about on Sunday morning. Alice. It was a cheap cotton Bedford cord. Moody. What was its color? Alice. Light blue ground with dark figure, small figure. Moody. Do you know when she got it? Alice. In the early spring of that same year. Here's the cross-examination by Governor Robinson for the defense. Robinson. You call it a Bedford cord, is that right? Alice. Yes, sir. Robinson. Is that what we call a calico? Alice. No, sir. Robinson. Quite different from a calico? Alice. Yes, sir. Robinson. And is it a cambric? Alice. No, sir. Robinson. The dress you saw on Sunday morning was not a calico, was it? Alice. I judge not. I suppose it was the same dress that I have reference to her having made in the spring. That was the Bedford cord. Robinson. Were you three the only persons in there at breakfast? Alice. No, sir. Robinson. Was Mr. Morris? Alice. Yes, sir. Robinson. And did I understand you to say that you went out Did you go out of the house after breakfast? Alice. I didn't go out of the house. I think I went to my room, or the room I occupied the night before, and put it in order. Robinson. Did you help in washing the dishes? Alice. No, sir. Not that morning. Robinson. You left that to Miss Lizzie and Miss Emma to do? Alice. Miss Emma. I can't say for sure about Lizzie. Robinson. When you came back from your chamber, you came into the kitchen and saw Miss Lizzie with the Bedford cord dress? And some other part of the dress was over on the mantel or a chair, was it? Alice. It was on the cupboard shelf. Robinson. Did you see blood on that dress? Alice. No, sir. Robinson. Did you see any blood on the remaining part of it? Alice. No, sir. Robinson. Did you see that it was a soiled dress? Alice. The edge of it was soiled as she held it up. The edge she held towards me, like this, she was illustrating, and this edge was soiled. Governor Robinson's clever location of the dress did not work. He says, part of this dress was over on the mantel or a chair, was it? He is trying to get Alice to say the dress was out in the open, not suspiciously hidden away in the closet, used for storing cleaning supplies and fuel for the stove. But Alice doesn't take the bait. She restates, it was on the cupboard shelf. Okay, let me find Emma's question to Lizzie, as she sees her standing at the stove with the skirt. What are you going to do? Takes on a different slant when Emma testifies during the Superior Court trial. Alice states she heard Emma say nothing after Lizzie tells her sister she is going to burn this whole thing up. Emma, under oath, testifies a year later at the trial that she responded to Lizzie's statement by saying, "Why don't you?" or "You better," or "I would if I were you," or something like that. Emma steps way over the ethical and legal line during the same testimony to state that she saw the stained Bedford cord dress hanging in the clothes press, which is a closet, guys, Saturday night after the funeral. She states she went into the closet looking for a peg to hang her dress on she had worn that day, and noticed the Bedford cord hanging there. That is after the police did an intensive search of that closet earlier that day and did not see the dress. She goes on to say it was her idea that Lizzie burns it, as if it was not good for anything, as it was so badly faded and soiled. Attorney Knowlton must have felt physically sick at this blatant lie. The burning of the dress gives us a few interesting insights. Lizzie's faith in her sister's complicity is absolute. She knows Emma will see her burning the dress. She is right there at the sink. Emma is probably still off balance from Lizzie's outburst the night before, screaming of betrayal. Yet Lizzie has not one doubt her older sister will stand by her. Another thing worth noticing is that the dress was never carried away to be disposed of. Many Lizzie fans have postulated that Bridget or Mrs. Holmes or even Alice covered for Lizzie and secreted the dress away. It is still here, and she must burn it to destroy the evidence. What we don't know, and may never know, is what became of the calico she wore over the Bedford cord when she was arrested and taken away. Did she find a way to remove the bloodstains from inside the lining? Did she continue to wear it, or did she find a way to destroy it as well? Alice Russell has seen much since the time Bridget Sullivan breathlessly knocked on her small cottage door the morning of Thursday, August 4th. Seeing the burning of the dress after witnessing Lizzie's changing stories to officers and friends, along with the frightening scene the night before, one that required Dr. Bowen to come running twice with a strong sedative, is all running through her mind. She will wrestle with it until the next day. During the time the Pinkerton detective was in the sister's employ, a disconcerting newspaper report came out of Hastings, Iowa. John Morris is home for 25 years before moving back to Massachusetts. The Hastings Dispatch. Miss Lizzie Borden has sent Detective Hanscom out here to investigate relative to Morris's past life. The people of Hastings, and particularly John Davidson, Morris's brother-in-law, are awaiting the arrival of the Pinkerton expert with much interest. Lizzie has gone after John. A trip to the receiving vault. The Fall River Herald. Saturday, August 7th, 1892. Assistant Marshal Fleet, Drs. Dolan and Leary, visited the receiving vault Sunday and made a further examination of the bodies, taking measurements of the wounds and notes of other matters, which will be of use when the testimony is needed in these directions. The visit to the cemetery was an important one. The axe was taken along with Dr. Dolan and Assistant Marshal Fleet and was fitted into the wounds, with what conclusions cannot be stated at once. The blow, which was delivered over the temple of both victims, was with a dull edge, and it was impossible to tell whether the axe would fit the wound or not. So shattered was the bone. The cut, which extended down the front of Mr. Borden's nose, was in a soft part of the face, so that the entire edge of the weapon cut into the flesh. It was an easy matter to measure that, and it was found that, while the exact length of the gash did not correspond with the width of the axe blade, yet it could readily have been made by such a weapon. None of the cuts on Mrs. Borden was so clean as that on the face of her husband. In every instance, the axe had brought it against the skull, and it was not embedded the entire width. Parentheses, the axe taken to compare to the Borden's wounds was likely the long-handled axe that Mayor Coughlin studied under a microscope. He found 3 suspicious stains that may be blood upon the handle. It was later ruled out as the murder weapon. If the article is referring to the claw-head hatchet that did have a 17-inch handle, its blade too was later found to be too wide to fit the incisions. In parentheses. Okay, I'm going to close the email off real quick. Okay. Dr. Dolan's findings on Abby's death. The Fall River Herald stated that medical examiner Dr. Dolan said the only discovery of importance made during the thorough investigation Saturday afternoon was in the spare room where Mrs. Borden's body was found. Out near the window, drops of blood were found, which indicated that the murdered woman had moved after the first blow was delivered. It is thought that the blow was the glancing one, which has been described. The supposition is that the axe fell on the right side of the head, taking off the flesh and hair, and that the woman turned and reeled to the space between the dressing case and bureau where the mortal wound was delivered. After that, the blows fell thick and fast. It is believed that when she was approached, Mrs. Borden stood looking out the window in this room, and her blood, which had stained it at this point, bears out that view. Dr. Dolan says that the more he reflects on the small quantity of blood that was spilled, the more at a loss he is to account for it. The same condition prevails in the sitting room below where Mr. Borden was butchered, and there was nothing to raise suspicion that the murderer had cleaned anything except the dripping axe. Parentheses, actually, the first blow fell on the left of Abby's face near her ear, not the right. End of parentheses. Officer Medley returns to Westport, Massachusetts. Officer Medley went to Westport on Sunday, August 7th, and spoke to Mrs. Cyrus Augusta W. Tripp at her home there. She was the old school friend Lizzie visited with the Pools during her trip to New Bedford 9 days before the murders. Officer Medley asked Augusta some questions, to which she answered, Lizzie told me she thought her stepmother was deceitful, being one thing to her face and another to her back. Lizzie told me her stepmother claimed not to have any influence with her father, but she must have influence with my father, or he never would have given my stepmother's half-sister such a very large sum of money, she said. She said, I do not know that my sister and I would get anything in the event of my father's death. This conversation took place at different times during former visits, nothing being said during her visit on July 26th. While Officer Medley was in Westport, he stopped to talk to the horse traders. Oh, hang on, he's in. All right, here we go. Give me a second. Hello, sir.
Well, hello. Good to be here.
Fantastic. Can you tell us?
I have the mouse in the house wasn't there.
Gotcha. Can you tell me a little bit about you, sir?
Yeah. Well, let me just adjust the picture. I'm somewhat on a spiritual path. I'm an ardent meditator, and since I was a little boy, I've been fascinated by the idea of death and what's going to happen to us. And so I've been developing my higher sense of knowing since I was in my teens, really, using different modes of doing that. And in 2013, I began to recover my past lives. And I kept a journal, and I eventually recovered 88 past lives. And it was just a great fulfillment. For for decades, I'd wanted to know the last 4 lives I'd had before this one. That's all I really wanted to know, a few basic facts. But I found out that I could know basically anything I wanted about my past lives. So out of that, a book came, my spiritual memoir, In Search of Lost Lives. And it really depicts my spiritual evolution across thousands of lives, going back all the way to the first planet I lived on, which is called Jorlu. That's the closest in English, when I was a mother with 6 children.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in a very quick nutshell, is who I am and why I'm here.
Fantastic. I'm fascinated by your past lives because I just had a past life thing done on me a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing, yeah. You know how everybody hopes that there's something special in your past life? I was nothing special, so I was kind of disappointed. But I mean, I guess everybody kind of hopes that. You know, people don't want to be like Joe Blow.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't quite get it.
Sure. I had my past life done a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
And I was kind of bummed about it because I thought, because I love music and stuff so much, that I had been something, someone from like the music industry or something like that, but I was just a farmer, and it was kind of a bummer. And I think, sometimes people think that when they get that regression that they're going to be someone special.
Right. Like in my book, I said, I was never Cleopatra, and that should relieve all the many people who were Cleopatra in a past life.
Right.
But when you said you had your past lives done, what do you actually mean? What do you mean they were done?
I was a farmer. I was actually a ranch hand farmer.
No, but I mean, did you access them or did somebody catalyze it?
I worked with a psychic.
Oh, you worked with a psychic.
Yeah.
Well, I would not necessarily believe the psychic because one thing I went to a number of psychics, and this is not anything to knock or criticize the profession, but I went to a number of them in my 20s and 30s, and often, not to find out about my past lives, but often they offered information about them. And when I began to recover my past lives, I remembered certain readings and facts, and I checked them out, and none of them are true.
Wow.
So you don't know where you're getting the information. One of the ways, in my book, I identify different ways you can kind of tune into them. I'm unusual in that I was meant to, in this life, I prepared to write this book between lives before I entered this body. But one point I make is that if you've ever had spontaneous deja vu, that feeling of overwhelming familiarity with a place, the chances are that you live there. The same thing with a person, depending on how intuitive you are. People you just meet and all of a sudden you've talked for 40 minutes or an hour. Chances are you've known them in a past life. And you can only guess that and I give examples of this throughout the book. One of the things I do early on in sort of the overture, which is like an introduction, is I list a number of unusual things about me, unusual talents, idiosyncrasies, and I show how they relate to specific experiences in particular past lives. So I would not really, you can enjoy going to a psychic. What they say may be true, but I wouldn't bet money on it. There is a certain point in the spiritual journey where all of your past lives, everything that's ever happened to you. And that is only when we go beyond the mind, because the soul has a record of everything. So when you go with a teacher, a guru who's gone beyond mind, and you're his or her disciple, if you go beyond universal mind, and you can do this while still in the body, Charlotte, while still living, and you leave the mind behind in universal mind, then you are just pure soul. That is who you really are, and you will know all your past lives. But by then, the bliss and the love and the beauty in that region is so you can't even describe it. It's unfathomable. You won't be interested in your past lives. You'll just want to go further, closer to higher spirit.
Did you find that when you started looking into your past lives that you wanted to do more and more? You know, you do the one
Well,
and then you want to see the other ones, you know?
yeah, well, I had certain idiosyncrasies and unusual things about me. I was curious as to what they related to. And I've always felt a very strong connection with ancient Greece. So I asked about lives there, and I
Hmm.
recovered 3 lives that made total sense. And by the way, a lot of the lives I recovered, I was a teacher or an administrator. Um, I dealt with money, and that very much fits in with who I am today. My main profession this lifetime was I was a tax accountant. Uh, so nothing really surprised me. The only thing that surprised me, to be honest, was when I recovered. I was curious about friends I'd had very intimate connections with, and I was surprised we didn't have more past lives together. But there were certain people that I felt, wow, this is a profound connection. It turned out that automatically what came back to me was, when I was in Hawaii on vacation, just after I started recovering the lives, this phrase kept coming to me, cohort of seven, cohort of seven. I had no idea what that meant. So I started to delve into my higher consciousness and ask questions. What the cohort of seven was were the seven mind and soul entities I was mainly with between lives. We were like in a spiritual school together, kind of progressing spiritually together. And with these people who were people on the earth, I'd had over 20 past lives together. And what's unusual about this life is that I knew all seven of them. And 2 lives ago, when I was a British banker, I knew all of them. So I was sort of like probably the only person who knew all of them at the same time.
Hmm.
But 4 of us have been on the same spiritual path, actually.
Can I ask you this? Because now that you mentioned, knowing these people from past lives, in the 88 lives that you have had, are there people that are still coming into your life from say from the furthest ones?
Are there still people coming into my life from previous lives?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I've been in Palm Springs a really long time,
Hmm.
21 years, longer than anywhere. And I was surprised how many people I found I had known in a past life. But my karma has been petering out here for years.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be moving next month. So I think there's already some very strong connections, but definitely people will come into my life from the past. But I was just really interested in answering initially questions of why I was who I am.
Hmm.
And that, who we are is more readily explained by who we've been in the past, much more so than our genetics in our nuclear family. But what I found out was like my higher consciousness kept wanting me to recover more and more. Like before bed, I would sit down with my pad and it's like, where are we going tonight? Am I going to recover a new life? And no, you're going to recover 7 new lives. So there was a period when my higher self was having me recover groups of past lives. And there were always 7 past lives. And each one of them had a spiritual evolutionary experience. 1 or 2 things happened that spiritualized me, that brought me higher. So these were all preparing me for this very beautiful, rigorous spiritual path I'm on now.
And I'm fascinated by the 88 past lives. How long did it take you to discover those 88 lives?
Oh, I'd say maybe a year. I was still very busy with my tax profession. I'd had
Hmm.
2 major surgeries. I I was struggling to recover from, but I've had far more than 88 past lives.
Okay.
Now, those 88 I write about, 71 were human. and 17 were animal. And the
Really?
reason the animal lives are in the book, In Search of Lost Lives, is that in lives where my hurtful actions outweighed my good actions, I lost the opportunity to come back as a human being. And a lot of those animal lives were really hard and heavy. But one of them was just, I was just tired and wanted to be taken care of. I came back as a pet dog. That's the life when I was a mother with 6 children, which, as far as I know, was the largest number of children I'd had.
Hmm.
Uh, so I actually know the number of human lives I've had, and that's 4,137.
Wow.
So if you're into any kind of spirituality and seeking, chances are you probably, I'm guessing, I don't know anyone's past, but I would imagine you've had 2,000 human lives.
Hmm.
And the Earth is my third planet, by the way. And the first 2 planets I lived on, the first was Jordu, the second was Zine. That's the closest in English. The people in those planets were more spiritually evolved by far, as a rule. Earth is really a very challenging place. It's a school of hard lessons, and I think people can relate that the duality, the division, is getting more intense seemingly. We're in a cycle that's called Kali Yuga, and I think we're entering a fairly difficult period.
So, to look at your past life, how do you do that? What process do you do to be able to go back?
Well, initially, Charlotte, there were triggers. I would be reading something, I would hear something, uh, something would occur to me.
Hmm.
Now, I had already seen the trailer, for instance, to 12 Years a Slave, and I happened to be watching TV, and the trailer came on again, and I was just overwhelmed with this feeling of hurt and loss and oppression. And that led me to recover a particular life as a slave in what we call Atlantis, the lost continent.
Hmm.
When I was taken as a slave, just as I was becoming a young adult, I had lived a longer life. So I eventually recovered and wrote about 4 lives when I was a slave, 3 in Atlantis and 1 in Europe, when I died of like poisoning when I was a young boy of an infection. And all those lives as a slave were just terrifically hard. And they were all very different. One thing that you would see from reading about the lives is really kind of how different they are and what different experiences you go through.
Very
So
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, so if listeners, if really, you can kind of maybe get a window into your past lives by developing your intuition,
Hmm.
by knowing what has really appealed to you. Now, I also had 2 very strange aversions I write about to 2 different countries. And just when the name of the country would come up, I would just have a bad feeling about it. And so I tracked down why I had this aversion to these 2 countries, one of which I had visited 3 times.
Hmm.
And it related to a very powerful experience in a past life, one past life only, that got very strongly imprinted on my mind that I carried forward to this lifetime. And once I recovered that experience, it dissolved, this aversion dissolved, and I said, oh, that's why. Okay. So, so the whole idea of past lives is that we come back, reincarnate, and kind of one of the rules of this creation is that people, for the most part, aren't meant to remember their past lives. Otherwise, they do everything they could to get out of the physical realm and into
Hmm.
a higher heavenly realm. But all our actions create reactions, and those are karmas. So all of us has a huge karmic load from all the lives in the past that we can't leave the physical and mental realms until we've paid off all of our karma. And that's been the object of my search for the last 3 lives. And what I came in here primed to find this path that would eliminate my karma. So if you commit good karmas, you're just, that's why a lot of people have all these great things happening to them. They've been very kind and generous in the past. If you're selflessly wonderful and good and generous throughout your life, you may be rewarded with what could be called a stay in heaven. And it could be a heaven just tailor-made to give you joy. But the fact is, you still have this big reserve of karmas, this called sanchit karmas in Sanskrit. And eventually that stay in heaven is going to come to an end, and you'll have to come back. And your next life will be an amalgamation from all those past karmas.
That was my next question with you. Do we have a choice as to whether we come back or not?
That really is an excellent question. And I know that a lot of people believe that you do. My experience is that you don't. It's sort of like the Lord of Karma really, assembles your karma and shoots you out. But, everything can exist in the creation because, the whole power of the Supreme Being is just total diversity. I mean, here, I recovered these lives on 2 very different planets where I looked different, but I was still a human. And I also had animal lives. So, in some cases, you may be able to choose what you come back at. Certainly, I think a lot of people who are in the acting profession, who are great musicians, the thing is your desires can form into karmas. So it's not like you're going through this fabulous buffet of 1,000 dishes and you pick each different dish. If you've really nurtured the strong desire to be a composer, for instance, and you've worked on it to a bit, you may work on it further between lives and then be born in circumstances either very favorable or unfavorable. But regardless, you are going to be a composer. So your strong desires really kind of create your future. So definitely, if there's something you want to do, if you want to end world hunger, I mean, probably a lot of the people who are doing all this good charitable work, they may have had lives in the recent past or not so recent past where they were starving, where they had food taken away from them, and they developed this desire to do good for people.
Well, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. That's fine.
Well, as you said earlier, that you went back through your lives to see, like some of the habits that you had or some of the stuff that you like to do. Can everybody do this? Can anybody go back to their past lives and see? Like you say, maybe somebody like wants to compose music or something. Is there a way that they can make themselves go back just to see if they had something to do with composing music in their past life?
Well, they'd have to. I wouldn't trust anybody to take me back. I mean, people have tried. A few people tried to hypnotize me. They weren't able to because my willpower was too strong. But really, it's a matter of meditation and consciousness. And I've prepared for this also between lives, and also I've been developing my intuition for decades, not knowing that a lot of it was to be able to recover past lives. So someone may be able to, it may be in a very different way from how I recovered my past lives. But but I think more important than just recovering your past lives, and learning about your past is figuring out what do you want this life to be. I mean, being a human, I hope my book shows, is a very precious gift. It's like the highest gift you can receive. I mean, as I told George on Coast to Coast AM, he wanted to know, if I knew how I started out, and I told him, as far as I know, I started out as a bush on the planet Jorlu. I mean, a lot of us started out in the plant life, and after I don't know, 1 million lives or whatever, we advanced to insect lives. So we're really at the top of creation. Human beings are really in a better spot than angels, definitely better than demons. It's in the human form that we can realize our divinity and go back to our source, to our true home. So I always often say in my interviews, the highest calling you can have is to be a seeker after truth, rather than just seeking what you know your past lives are. Accept the fact that you've been all over the place, you've had fabulous experiences, you've had horrific experiences, you know, when you've been killed. I was just remembering a life when I'd been murdered. Now that was a great life. I was a nobleman in Hungary, very wealthy. It was one of the best families I've ever had. But that life ended when a group of bandits overwhelmed me and murdered me. You know, so I left early. So rather than, you know, be that, I mean, just accept the fact that you've had a huge amount of experience and really, you know, really confront the fact that this is my opportunity to make enormous spiritual progress. It is on earth where we can make really great spiritual progress. When you're in an inner region and everything is so gloriously beautiful, the spiritual progress is much slower, actually. So it's on earth when we're going through all this stuff where we have opportunity after opportunity to not react negatively, but to be positive and giving.
So if I'm understanding this right, do we have any choice into what life we choose, or are we just assigned a life?
Well, my experience is that it's really been been given to me. It's been assigned. I haven't had really any choice in the matter, but it may be different for other people. You may be agreeing. You know, people have different spiritual teachers. My cohort of 7 and I, we had different spiritual teachers at different phases of our evolution. So that may be possible to choose, but I mean, the best way, I mean, if you have, like, if you want to share, do you have a particular desire to have a particular past life? I mean, future life, rather. I mean, is there something you really want to do, to come back to do, that you can't do this lifetime, would you say? I mean, you personally.
Right. Because you know what? Because you hear stories about people who, I don't know, that they remember that they have a choice in, you know, in heaven to come back, and some of them will choose to be hurt, or have something going on because it enriches them, through this next life, and then they go back, and they're, like you say, a higher self.
Right. Well, you know, I can't speak to that because, you know, my experience has been kind of different uh, between that. In terms of what I recovered between lives, is more like preparing for the next life. The meditation I was doing, like the books I write, I was the last 2 and the one I'm working on now, I was doing certain mental meditation work to prepare to write that. You know, and I know, you know, pretty much where I was between lives. But the main thing is to really, you know, in my new book, A New Now, which I don't think you've had a chance to look at yet, uh, I go over the 33 mystical wisdoms. And in the wisdom of grooming, I talk about spiritual grooming and the 4 basic choices that you have. You can basically ignore, you know, what your destiny may be and just really follow your desires, which is what virtually everybody does. They just go from one desire to another. Most people are ruled by their lower mind and they just follow their desires. Or you can, kind of a second different kind of choice you can make, although nothing is really a choice. But we were talking about developing your talent to be a composer or a musician. You can kind of engineer your life to set yourself up for a future life where you can make a contribution, or, you know, be an artist and have that expression. Or we were talking about doing all these terrific good works to be rewarded with a stay in heaven. And the 4th most profound option is to search for a spiritual path in which you can eliminate all of your karmas and lead a heavenly existence forever. and never come back. So in the wisdom of grooming I write about in A New Now, this is really kind of a guidebook for the rest of your life.
So the question I have too is, you hear the stories about the children that have past life experiences when they're kids.
Yes.
They remember their past lives. Were you? Did you ever have? Because obviously you've had so many past lives. Have you ever had any instances of that?
If I did, I probably did, but kind of like the call over you hardens as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many examples of young children, 3 to 5 years old, who have all their memories intact and they can give exact information. But as they get older, it's like the call over their memory hardens and they can't access it. So it's just sort of like it can almost feel like it's an unfair game. Like we we can't see the results of our actions and reactions,
Mm-hmm.
but this is an opportunity to act with love and generosity, humility and kindness, every opportunity, and rather than taking the low road to take the high road, because there's so much negativity and meanness in the world. It doesn't mean you have to react to that in the same manner.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely a lot of children are in touch with their past lives, particularly if they're with family they've been with before. Now, one thing which was actually not that surprising, I wondered about my immediate nuclear family, and they were each what I called first timers. I had very, very tough uh, experiences with them. I had each type of abuse with each member of the family. I had emotional and incestual abuse, a lot of physical abuse with another member, and really sexual violation with another member. And they were all first timers. So, karmas can be assigned to people you haven't been with before.
So
And
go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
No, you go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry. What?
You go ahead.
Oh, so often when, like I met somebody a couple of years ago and she desperately wanted to know, she was convinced that we'd had past lives together. Um, and as far as I do, nothing, nothing. And, um, but I think what she was picking up on is that we have a lot of future karma stuff to go through, because where I'm moving, she's like one of the closest people to where I'm now moving. We don't live in the neighborhood. So I think she was just so intuitive that she was picking up on all the stuff we can go through together. And I think most of it would be beautifully positive. Um, and she's just one of my favorite, best people and supporters of my writing.
I was going to ask you about that. In this life, if you've recognized anybody from your past lives.
Oh, well, yeah, I give many examples in my memoir, In Search of Lost Lives, and I show how it happened. Um, yeah, it's very clear where I give examples, and I give names of people. Most of the names are changed, or I just give initials, but definitely I give. And by the way, if people want to hear other interviews where I give a lot of detail about my past lives or read excerpts from my books, if you don't mind, let me share my website. Um,
Sure.
my website is Goddart.com. You can see my name, G-O-D, another D, A-R-T.com. Just go there. You can go to free media. You can click on the books. A New Now, I'm very humbled and happy to report. At this time, it came out last year. It's won 9 book awards and honors. So the judges have been really liking the book for these different book awards. And that is a book to really help you. It's a guide for helping you live the best life possible and recover the authentic you. And it will really, I think if you work with it, it'll enhance your powers of discrimination and intuition and definitely wisdom. It's a wisdom book for people. And also it shares the 10 keys to achieving equilibrium. And equilibrium, that is something I think we all need to know how to return to in these very turbulent times.
Mhm. Now, when you go back to look into your past lives, are you looking at your past life as an observer, or are you actually in that past life?
Both. I mean, the ones that came through automatically, like when I recovered that I was a ruler and I started an unnecessary war. This was on my second planet. That's actually my first extraplanetary life I recovered. I was like reliving it, and I was like, back in the body, but also still in this life. And I was just, I just kind of fell off my recliner and curled into a fetal ball and begged for forgiveness for starting this unnecessary war. I thought we were going to be invaded by this more powerful country. So to show, our hot stuff, I invaded another country, and it cost many hundreds of thousands of lives. So because of that, I went to what is commonly called a hell. I entered a state of reformation of indescribable suffering that seemed to last an eternity, and that did not pay off all the karma. So those leaders who are full of themselves and are starting wars, it's going to catch up with them, I would say. And I just feel so sorry for everybody. So many people are suffering because of wars and illegal groups and everything. But when you leave this body, you're not dead. You're just out of the body.
Okay.
So you have always a chance for a better life.
Right. Right.
So a number of the instances, but when I kind of went through all the things I was curious about, that was sort of the main, that and all these automatic triggers. My higher consciousness was wanting me to recover lives, and they were always new, and they always had like some spiritual lesson or experience to share with people. So it's been a grand evolution. As far as I know, this will be my last life, and I'll be happy to bid Earth adieu. It's been a school of good and hard knocks, actually.
How do you know this will be your last life?
Well, it's because of the spiritual path I'm on, but most important, I have no desire to return. You go where your attachments are. So, I mean, a lot of people are extremely attached to their families or certain lovers. You're going to meet up with them again. So you go, like a lot of my lives, most of my lives more recently over the past, 15, 20,000 years have been in Europe. I kept going back to Europe. But the majority of my Earth lives were on Atlantis. I did have some lives in Africa. I just mentioned one in the book that I thought was of great interest. But I also had lives during Atlantean times when I was of Lemurian stock, and these were in what is now Indonesia, and also land that's now underwater. But you go where your attachments are, basically.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
so even if you're on a spiritual path, you've been initiated to go back to the Godhead, and even if you haven't seen much spiritual progress this life, if you're not attached at all, chances are you won't have to return. But the inner regions, the inner realms are so vast, even if you can kind of get there, the main thing is to look for a teacher who has gone as far as possible on the inner journey. Because even if you have automatic experiences or you're able to withdraw your soul and mind current, it's sort of like, if I found myself in St. Petersburg and I had to walk to Irkutsk, on the other end of Russia, I'd have no idea how to get there, and I wouldn't know the language. I wouldn't know Russian. So, the main thing is to look for a guide who can take you where you want to go.
Now, is there a chance that when you do come back, that maybe they'll send you to a similar life that you had before? Like you were talking about, particular lives that you enjoyed, what are the chances that you might get back into a similar life?
Well, if I came back, I would be in a better situation to make good spiritual progress. I would, get initiated to get onto my path.
Mhm.
Now, I would be in a situation where I could be found by a spiritual master. That woman or man could be on a different continent and country, but somehow I would come in contact. If you're meant to be found by a spiritual teacher, it'll happen. You could be living in that one town over, but if it's not fated to be, you're not going to have any interest in that spirituality. So, if you go through my book, and the lives are arranged in reverse chronological order. So you can read, like my last two lives, I was English. So, and those are have the most pages devoted to them because they were of much greater interest to me. But you can, it goes back and back and back and back and back in time. And then after you finish reading the book, you can see, the great distance I've traveled kind of spiritually in my development. Like there was one life in Europe that I didn't really understand that other living things can experience pain. Like if you take a knife to a rabbit, that rabbit will experience pain of having that knife go through the neck. One life, I didn't really have that appreciation. So one life I had a spiritual experience where I got it. So, if you're an avid meat eater, maybe you're meant to be, but, you're part of the chain of killing. And a lot of people are becoming vegan, which is, I think, a very beneficial thing for them, actually. The main thing is you don't want to create pain. You don't want to create more suffering. Because that suffering is going to come back on you. That's just basic spirituality 101.
The other question I have for you is, since you've had all these lives, those experiences, do you have any scars or anything that correlate to any of your past lives?
Well, I did talk about a scar. I found like in a past life I had a scar that I was, on my face, and I described how that happened. But I don't have any scars this life from a past life. But I believe that's a possibility. Definitely. Like I'm very fluent in English. This is my third life. Well, actually, my fourth life in a row when English has been my native tongue. Because 3 lives ago, I was a commercial architect in Baltimore just after the American Revolution. So that American life and then those 2 English lives, and then I was born in America this lifetime. So that has helped me immensely as a writer and as a communicator. Now, if some people are very violent and animalistic, they may have just come up from animals. Like I've always had an aversion to like meat-eating big cats, and I've had a number of lives as an elephant. And other animals, and it's like I've been attacked and eaten by these flesh-eating cats. So, and so your intuition, in which you can pick up your aversions and your likes, can be very telling.
Is that why we have sometimes we have fears of different things? Like
Is
maybe
that,
somebody's.
I'm sorry, is that why what?
Is that why sometimes we have fears of different things and we don't know why?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Some
Yeah,
people
well, the
are
thing
afraid
is,
of dogs, they don't know why, or a cat, or even like tiger, like you say, you were eaten by tigers or whatever, and so
yeah.
when you see them, automatically you just feel a fear of them, but you don't know why.
Well, yeah, or an inversion. The same thing with like orangutans or apes.
Uh huh.
I have an aversion to them. but I've always had a great love of elephants and beavers and dolphins. And I know that in between my human lives in Atlantis, I was a dolphin in other times. So, and those are very, very high animals as well. So, depending on your intuition, your development, these are really kind of signs of where you were, who you were, especially if you've traveled. Like I remember the first time, I believe you're in Sacramento or close by, Sacramento. Well, I lived in Sonoma County for 13 years. And the first time I went to Occidental, I sort of like, I entered a different phase of being. I was like dizzy with what I call the rapture of recognition. And it turned out I had visited Occidental 2 lives ago when I was this British banker on a trip around the world. And I was picking up on that. And when I visited it, I thought, gee, I'd like to live here. I would like to live in this area. And it was just really not many years after the railroad had been completed. I had stopped in San Francisco and took the ferry to Sausalito and took the train through Marin and Sonoma. And so I did come back and live. And 4 of my cohort of 7 were living in Sonoma County. That's where I met them. So it was very much fated to be. So if you're somewhere and it feels really familiar, I mean, the chances are you lived there before.
Another question I have, if you could do this for me, which life, after looking at all your past lives, which one stands out to you the most?
Well, my last 2, I would have to say, probably because they were recent, but because I was so much further along in my spiritual path. The most important life for me, I feel, was my 2 lives ago as a British banker, when I met a realized saint in India. I worked for a bank, and I was in the British Raj in India for 3 years. I was also in Grenada afterwards. So my life as a British banker stands out the most. But the lives that resonate the most with me are well, that one, my life when I was a Carthusian monk in Slovenia. I lead a very monkish life, and my life as a Greek philosopher. That was like my wealthiest life, and that gave me the freedom to go to schools of philosophy and write philosophy. But I had a huge estate. That was a very solitary life because my parents died at an early age, and eventually it was just me and my uncle. And I had a huge estate with servants and slaves, although they were well-treated slaves. Nobody was tortured or hurt. But that life as a philosopher really resonates with me this lifetime. I mean, I wanted to be a novelist, and I had like the training to be a novelist, but there was block after block after block, and I finally gave up, and I went back to writing nonfiction spirituality. So it's really guided into this. And each of us has a certain fate or destiny, and it's really good to learn how to go with the flow and not resist. I mean, just believe you're living in the divine will, and be grateful. Be as positive and happy as you can be, and try to make the best out of every situation.
If someone wants to explore their past lives, where do they start?
Well, I would look for a meditation to advance you beyond the physical. To be honest, I mean, there are people who do hypnotic regression. I've never been able to be hypnotized, so I don't know if that is true or not. I mean, the only way you can really know if a past life is true, well, I've been given, apparently the ability to know in the physical form, but to go within, to go in the inner realms, to withdraw your mind and soul current through your eye center, your third eye, and to go to a high enough place where you can see where your past lives were. But after you die, you may be able to review other past lives in addition to this one.
Now, this is a question I have about that now. When, like you talked about being a banker, now when you are reborn and you come back to Earth, is there still part of you in heaven? Because obviously you got maybe relatives that loved you in that life and still want to contact you, but you've been reborn.
So are you asking, is there still part of me that's left like in the
Yes,
realms?
yes.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I don't think so. I mean, I think my soul is pretty much stationed in this body with my mind. You basically we're three entities. We're the body, the soul, and the mind. And your soul and mind are knotted together. When the soul came down from the Godhead, it had to take association with the mind. And you've been incurring karmas because of your mind, in life after life after life. So, but anything can exist. There can be group souls. People have written about that. Anything can really exist, and the sky's the limit. But the main thing is to really try to be clear on how you can make best use of your present life, because it's going to end. I mean, I was not surprised when COVID hit. I was sort of on my radar for years that a big epidemic was coming. So people, there are people who thought they would have friends and family with them for decades more. They were taken. I mean, people in their 30s and 40s at the height of health died. So we never know when we're going to be taken. When we go on a drive, we don't know if we're going to get out of the car. So it's always, how can I make best use of this day? Rather than being really obsessed with outer phenomena, focus more on the inner phenomena of your own spiritual development. That's really the best advice I could give, because the mind, just wants to be obsessed with different things. I mean, whether it's different games or shows. Now, it's important to be who you are, to lead an authentic life, and to lead a balanced life. Now, I'm not someone to spend 3 to 5 hours watching football games. I would be too bored. That isn't me. But if that's something that's really part of you, don't deprive yourself. I mean, that's the other thing. You have to know who you are and don't deprive yourself, and not be swayed by other judgments from other people. There are people in different religions and spiritual paths who, you may look up to different leaders, or you may feel that people are more advanced than you are. Don't be swayed by them. I mean, if they, are good, loving examples, you can profit from their modeling, but don't try to force yourself into doing things that are not authentically you. You have to be where you are, to go forward on the spiritual path.
How hard was it, because you've had all these lives? Was it difficult trying to put all this into a book?
Well, no, I mean, I kept a journal, and I wasn't sure. At first, I thought I would have 20 pages that I would share with a few really close friends, but they kept coming. And after I saw my teacher overseas, there was a point, I was just walking through this park in Wales, and I realized, wow, I can recover any past life I want, and also I can know what I can't recover. There are things that I can't know. Like, somebody asked me on Coast to Coast, what were my past lives? Well, I told them, I'm not omniscient. Eventually I may be omniscient. Now, if I were to meet you in person, I would very easily know whether I've had past lives with you or not. And I'd be able to recover what our relationship was and what was good or bad about it. Like, I had really an aversion and kind of bad feelings about somebody on my spiritual path who was really looked up to. He was really like a paragon of virtue, and he was a leader, and he felt very uneasy about me. And this was a very strong aversion. Well, I recovered that we had some really bad business dealings in the past that left a really bad taste in both of our lives, and it hadn't been resolved. And I wish I had recovered that while he was still alive, because he thought I was a certain way, uh, and he found, he made his own judgments about why we had a difficult relationship. So if you do have a difficult relationship with somebody, it may be because of bad stuff that happened in the past.
Well, the other question I have, along that line is that, do you think that, we really like I know with my past life, someone I knew in this life had been my wife, and we're real close friends. They're carried over to being close friends. Do you think that emotions can carry over from a past life?
Oh yeah, definitely. I do. Um, there are different people I felt very close to and communicative to. Yeah, you could have a feeling that someone, was your wife or some lover. With the cohort of seven, like I'm thinking of this one person who came like right away to me. We've had all kinds of relationships together. You can't, it'd be almost impossible to kind of separate them. But that's the other thing is to keep finding your spiritual group. Uh, people who bring out the best in you. And that can change from time to time. Karmas have to end. Either someone will move away, or they'll die, or something unpleasant will happen, and the relationship will end. So now I'm moving after a really long time. I have no idea. The last 2 years I've led a really solitary existence. My social life at the most, other than seeing medical people, it's been maybe one conversation a week on the phone with a friend. And years ago when I lived here, I'd go out 3 or 4 times a week for meals with people. So, often if you're going through a lot of karma, you may feel like you're having several lives compressed into one. And a lot of my friends feel that way. I, when I think back about all the different places I've lived and groups of people I was with, it's almost as if I've had 7 lives in this lifetime, which is a good thing because that means I'm going through a lot of karma.
Right.
I'm paying off a lot. So, no matter how intense it is, be grateful for whatever comes because you don't know what it's paying off. So, we really have a challenge because we don't know why we're going through what we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's important just to develop a very positive faith that, the will of the higher power, whatever you want to call that supreme being, if you want to give it a name, is really, the best for you. And the best thing for you is to develop a desire to be with God, to know God, the real higher power. But just to be grateful for every breath that you take is important. Because, you don't know what you may come back as.
Mm-hmm.
It may be very difficult.
Were there any major surprises when you started to look through your past lives? Was there anything that really surprised you?
Well, there were a lot of surprises. Well, I mean, I was surprised that I started that war, that unnecessary war, but it explained a lot because I've always been fascinated by international affairs. I initially wanted to get a degree in international relations. And every time, I'm never interested in local affairs. I don't read the local paper. But the point I'm trying to get to is that when things happen on the world stage, long before I recovered that past life, I would put myself in the leader's place and I would think, well, why isn't he doing this and not doing that? It's sort of like I was like role playing, I was like seeing myself as this world leader doing a much better job than the other person, and coming from a higher place. So in effect, I mean, I was very surprised that I'd started the war and felt horrible about it, but I wasn't surprised because mentally, that was what I call a notable life. I go into what are called notable lives, and I go through 13 of them. And these lives are like you're like a main character in a movie. you have like a starring role, and they leave a very strong impression on you. So that life as a leader, the impression continues to be on me as a leader. And so one thing you may, certain really important aspects of your character may be carryovers from these notable lives that we have. Like if I had to point to one person who's probably living a notable life, I would have to say Oprah. If that's not a notable life, I don't know what is, actually. She came here with a huge, fabulous agenda, which she's really carrying out with enormous grace and beauty. And George Goering may be having a notable life too. We just don't know. But a notable life can be a quiet life. You don't have to be in the public eye. It can be a very quiet, intense life. And that's one thing I personally find really surprising and interesting about the past lives I write about in Search of Lost Lives. Oh, by the way, you can see it behind me. You can see the awards it won. Is that how different the notable lives were. And in the book, I describe what a notable life is. That was really interesting. What really surprised me, actually, because I have a very strong background in metaphysics, is that these new metaphysical terms came through to me, like notable life, and my cohort of 7, this group of people, and great love. I kind of, people are very, a lot of people are very focused on soulmates, what they are. I kind of dispense with that theory, and in its place I talk about great loves, and I write about 3 great loves that I had. And what was really interesting and not surprising is that all of them, it was like my 4th or 5th life with the person. We'd been in the same family, we'd been best friends, so we had this beautiful foundation to build on. And lo and behold, there we were, born in the same country, not far from each other, and we discovered each other. So I definitely, in my last, one thing that was very fulfilling, I recovered my last 50 lives, all of them, back to my last animal life when I was a female cow and had 3 calves. That was my last animal life. But within those 50 lives, I had 3 great loves. Now, I had many marriages where it wasn't, it wasn't that great. The greater love was with the children, for instance.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This hour went by so fast.
It did, and thank you for your patience. And it was great being with you. I'd be more than happy to come back. And if anybody wants to know, more about me and my background, just go to Goddart.com, my last name, .com.
Fantastic. And I'd love to have you back to talk more about this because you're just 4,000 lives. There's just so much to cover.
There is, yeah. There's no dearth of information. All the very best to you and your listeners.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Charlotte.
You have a good evening.
You too. All the
Bye-bye.
best.
Okay, guys, I learned a lot. 4,000 lives. Wow. That just boggles the mind, doesn't it? Absolutely boggles the mind. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank Michael Goddart again for coming. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Also, if you're watching from Facebook, please hit that follow button. Or if you're watching from Twitch, please hit that follow button. Or if you're watching from TikTok, hit that follow button. And another one is YouTube. YouTube, if you look down at the bottom right-hand corner, as I'm slipping down here, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you see a ghost with a magnifying glass and a Sherlock Holmes hat on. That's our mascot. That's the subscribe button. Please subscribe. We've got almost 270 videos over there, and they're all differing topics. So I think there's a little bit of something for everybody. Again, I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, Mary A. Joyce is going to join us, and she's going to be talking about Werner von Braun and a little bit about his beliefs on the space race and about extraterrestrials. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night. I will be teaching Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific. I'll be teaching a basic psychic development class. It's just an entrance to see how psychic you are and what you can do with those abilities. Real simple, okay? Anyway, you can excuse me. You can figure all that out at Facebook. Not Facebook. Help me, Lord. Actually, I did advertise it on Facebook, and and you go to our meetup.com to sign up for that class, and just dial in CaliforniaHauntsMeetup.com. Anyway, you want to check out the radio show itself, CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com. That's the place to do it. But again, I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. Let me fix my screen here. There we go. And I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And I'll show you our guest's contact information and the books that he's written. Here we go. Website, Goddart.com, Goddart.com. And those books, The Spiritual Revolution, In Search of Lost Lives, Bliss, and A New Now. And of course, you can grab those at Amazon.com. And I almost forgot that ticker thing flying below the bottom of the screen. That's because California Haunts doesn't take any money to investigate. It's all done out of our own pockets. And so I'm funding the whole ballgame. And if you could help me out a little bit, that would be great. It all goes towards equipment. It goes towards expenses to put the radio show on. That's all it's spent on. That's all it goes. So if you could help me out at PayPal me at California Haunts, that would be great. Or Venmo and then just type in California Haunts. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, I want to see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Bye.